The Sasanian Empire, last of the great empires to rise in the Middle East during antiquity, and in my opinion, the greatest of them, was a major political player between the 3rd and 7th centuries AD. An urbanized empire with major centers of commerce, culture, and a military that time and time again managed to match and even surpass the Roman legions. This massive empire that extended from the eastern Mediterranean all the way to the Indian subcontinent also produced a wonderful numismatic legacy which we will get to enjoy today. So let's get started. Now, before we look at the coins struck by this very important empire, let's get an overall idea of who they were and what made them special. The early 3rd century AD saw the final downfall of the old Parthian Empire. After numerous defeats against the Romans, the sack of their capital, and without being able to handle internal political instability, one of their vassals, the Kingdom of Persis, rose in open revolt. The Parthians were unable to contain this uprising, and from the ashes of their empire, the Sasanians rose in their place, officially establishing their new state in 224 AD. The name Sasanian or Sassanid comes from Sasan, the first monarch of this new ruling dynasty, and for the next 4 centuries, their way of ruling was substantially different to the old Parthian ways. The Sasanians were much more urbanized than their predecessors. They established new cities and expanded the old ones, and this concentration of peoples in urban centers allowed for better trade, more efficient production of manufactured goods, the development of more intricate art and architecture overall. The new vigor of these new rulers could clearly be seen in their foreign policy. While the Parthians were generally more concerned with protecting their borders, the Sasanians were clearly a belligerent people, often clashing with Rome and achieving very impressive feats against what many consider the unstoppable Romans. The peace they imposed upon Emperor Philip, for example, the incredible capture of Emperor Valerian and destruction of his army, and the continuous clashes against the Eastern Roman Empire in late antiquity and the early Middle Ages indicate just how well developed their military must have been. A new complex administrative system was also established, with the Shahanshah, the King of Kings, at the very top, followed by multiple noble families that oversaw a complex network of local administrators and ministers that carried out royal mandates at the local level. This new way of managing the empire's resources greatly increased the number of men and materials the elites could muster in times of war, for construction projects, and any new public works that the king deemed necessary in a certain region. They also possessed a very advanced road network that rivaled anything the Romans could construct, which made sense. Their territory was absolutely massive. The Sasanians also established great centers of learning. Ancient texts in Greek, Latin, and Old Syriac were translated into Pahlavi, the local language, and further research was made upon that rescued knowledge. Thousands of students enrolled every year on these academies, and works on medicine, construction, engineering improved quality of life to a point that by the end of Sasanian rule in the 7th century, Mesopotamia had the largest population density in the medieval world. Much of the impressive feats of urbanization, architecture, and technological prowess, which is typically attributed to the medieval Islamic world, can be directly credited to development inherited by the Sasanians. The round city of Baghdad, created by the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mansur as his new shiny capital, a jewel of Arab architecture, could only really be constructed by employing the knowledge on construction and fortifications directly inherited by the Sasanians, and the huge resources of manpower and money for such a massive project could only be achieved by the impressive development that the area already had, also fruit of Sasanian rule. They of course also profit greatly from the Silk Road that connected the Far East to Europe and Northern Africa. The coinage reforms instituted by the Sasanians in their territory created new coins of very good metal quality and consistent weight that were accepted from Europe all the way to China. Their coins were quite different to what was previously seen. Instead of smaller, thick coins made by casting molten metal into a mold, which was the typical way of doing it for the ancient world, the Sasanian silver drachma and gold dinars were cold cut from flat, thin sheets of metal and struck in lower relief. Coins heavily inspired by the Sasanian drachma were made for centuries after their fall, like the Islamic dirhams or the dozens of different types of drama silver denominations struck by different Indian states. And you know what? Since we touched on the subject of their coinage, that's a nice clue for us to look at our first coin of the day. And we have the first Sasanian king, Ardashir I. Struck between 233 and 239 at the imperial capital Ctesiphon, these drachmas served not only as the new main coin denomination that was to be used around the empire, but as a way of communicating to Ardashir's new subjects about his new divine right to rule and the new state religion, Zoroastrianism. On the obverse, we have this wonderful looking bust of Ardashir. Remarkable high quality portrait for this coin. As we can see, he had quite a lot of hair. We can see this very long beard and the hair that flows over his shoulders. Over his head, the really big crown worn by the Sasanians. Each monarch had their own unique crown design. Sometimes they had multiple different crowns, and an easy way to differentiate one king from the other is by looking at their crowns, as the portraits get more and more abstract as the years passed. The legends in Pahlavi translate roughly to the divine Ardashir, adorer of Ahura Mazda, king of kings of Iran, born from the gods. Heading to the reverse, we have the sacred fire of Ahura Mazda, the main icon adored by the Zoroastrianism. This sacred fire was always kept burning on temples spread throughout the empire, and high-ranking priests of the Zoroastrian faith were among some of the most important administrative chiefs of this empire. A short description in the legends mentions the flame. It translates to the fire of Ardashir. The son of Ardashir, Shapur I, managed to be an even better ruler than his father. A very accomplished general, Shapur was a thorn on the side of the Romans for decades. He first defeated an expedition led by Gordian III, resulting on the emperor's death, later managing to sign an advantageous truce with the next emperor, Philip the Arab. Years later, he managed to win a crushing victory over the Emperor Valerian, seizing the emperor as a prisoner, and even on defeat, when he was finally bested by the Roman general Odenatus, he managed to prevent the capture of his capital. Shapur reigned for an impressive 30 years, between 240 and 270, so let's take a look at one of his drachma. Very good work on the part of the Sasanian die engravers. We can see a clearly different portrait to that of Ardashir. I particularly like how his beard is tied together in this little circular bun right at the tip, instead of the long and straight hair of Ardashir. His hair is tied to a big bundle, also on the back of his head, and his crown has the series of interesting protrusions that make it look like a crown made out of towers, like the mural crowns we see on some Greek coins. The legends are similar to that of his father. We read, the divine Mazda-worshipping Shapur, king of kings of Iran, whose essence comes from the gods. Heading to the reverse, we have a stylistic evolution. Now, instead of a simple altar with the eternal flame, we have two kings flanking the fire. This shows how religious and political power were tied together in the running of this vast empire. The legends read, the fire of Shapur. Going a bit forward in time, let's go to the 5th Sasanian king, Bahram II, who reigned between 274 and 293 AD. He lived through one of the first periods of major crisis in the empire's history. Having such a major empire meant having to appease many different peoples and cultures, and revolts were bound to happen. While Bahram was handling revolts on the far east of his territory, the Roman Emperor Carus took the opportunity to attack Bahram from the west, going all the way to the capital Ctesiphon and sacking the city. In an act of maybe divine intervention in favor of Bahram, stories tell that Carus was killed by a lightning bolt. The Romans must have been so scared by this that they retreated, and Bahram managed to retake the west, managing to hold on to power. The obverse of this coin is spectacular. This is a dynastic issue featuring the king. We also see his queen, Shapur Duktak, and one of his sons, whose name has been lost. In good Sasanian fashion, his crown is different to that of his predecessors, featuring a winged crown, and the queen and the prince also have their own little crowns. The queen's crown is tipped by a boar. I think it's a tusk there, so it looks like a boar. And the prince's crown features an eagle head. In a different interpretation, some numismatists claim that these figures aren't actually his wife and son, but instead gods and goddesses. So in this case, the goddess Anahita and the god Mithra. But considering the turbulent rule that Varam had, it's quite likely that this coin featured indeed the royal family, because it was, after all, a way to give him legitimacy and to send the message that the empire was led by a well-unified royal family. On the reverse, we have a continuation of the design established by Shapur. Two very well-drawn attendants maintaining and caring for the sacred fire, and the legends, the fire of Waram, connected the emperor to the holy presence of Ahura Mazda. Now let's do a big jump in time and go to the 5th century AD, between the years 420 and 438, under the reign of Varam V. During his long reign, Iran culture saw one of its golden ages. Varam enjoyed a mostly peaceful and prosperous reign. His coinage is quite abundant, so that backs this up as well, and he's mentioned in multiple works of ancient Persian literature as a fair king who cancelled many of his subjects' debts and promoted high culture, literature, and enjoyed hunting quite a bit as well. As we can see on the obverse, by this time the portraits on the drachma were starting to become a bit less personal, with the portrait of the king not having any facial features that clearly distinguish one portrait from another. However, we can still tell one king from the other once more by looking at their different crowns. In Waram V's case here, he picked a mural crown with a crescent under this massive ball at the top. We will see coin designs become more and more intricate and complex as we go forward in time. The legends read, "The divine Waram, king of kings of Iran, whose essence comes from the gods." On the reverse, now the fire attendants directly face the fire and have their swords drawn in front of them. In front of the fire altar, we have a face. That is the face of the god Ahura Mazda coming out of the sacred fire. A nice little touch for this reverse. And once more, the reverse legend says, "The fire of Waram." Now, how about some gold? Let's head to the 6th century AD, to the super long reign of Khusro II, the last truly great Sasanian king and one of the greatest patrons of Iranian art. Khusro's reign from 590 to 628 had some very intense warfare, and he managed to fare well in the beginning at least, going so far as to capture eastern Anatolia, the Levantine region, so the area around Jerusalem, and even Egypt from the Byzantines. Sadly for Khusro, the Byzantines rallied and managed to retake those territories, with Khusro meeting a violent end at the hands of his nobility. This wonderful gold dinar is an interesting piece. Sasanian gold coins were typically big, impressive 7 to 8 gram coins, similar to the old Roman aureus in weight, and likely used mostly as savings for the rich and powerful and as money for external commerce. This dinar, however, is much lighter at just 4.5 grams, the same weight as the Byzantine solidus, the gold solidus. This coin could have been an attempt of Khusro to come up with a gold coin that would be accepted in these newly captured territories, and of course as a way to spread the message of their new ruler. The obverse has a similar design to that of the silver drachma, with the bust of Khusro looking to the right. Notice his lovely crown, also a turreted style, with a crescent and two big wings outstretched at the very top. At this time in Sasanian history, the crowns worn by the kings have gotten so large and cumbersome that the main hall in the imperial palace had a series of ropes and pulleys to help the king sustain that enormous crown comfortably on his head while he walked around and attended to people. If the obverse wasn't impressive already, the reverse is what makes this coin truly special. Here we have the facing bust of the goddess Anahita, one of the primary deities of the Iranian pantheon. Here in the legends, we might have a confirmation of the theory that this coin was meant to circulate in these new territories. It reads, Khusro, Shahanshah of Iran and An-Iran. An-Iran meaning non-Iran, so king of Iran and non-Iran, All in all, a spectacular example of Sasanian art and a cool show of how coins based on precious metals were, let's say, flexible. Since gold was gold and it was accepted everywhere, all you had to do was to adapt the metal purity and the weight standard, and you could easily trade with foreign countries, or in this case, newly conquered territories, and better integrate them into your state. And to wrap things up, if you have a Sasanian silver drachma, it's very likely that it will be a silver drachma of Khusro II, the same king we just looked at the previous gold coin. These coins are incredibly common. One, obviously because of the very long reign of Khusro, but it might be a case of some very big hoard that has been dispersed not that many years ago, and there's still quite a bit of coins of this type going around the market, so prices are still very affordable. You should take a look at them. Notice the darker spots on this coin. This spotty dark patina is probably the result of this coin being sandwiched between two other coins, with only these stone parts being exposed to air and the elements and getting this dark color. Fascinating. On the obverse we have a portrait that looks just like the previous coin. We have a portrait of the king wearing his very big mural crown, also with the crescent and the pair of open wings. The legends around the bust translate to Khusro, may his splendor grow. On the outside of this triple circular beading border, at the 5 o'clock area, notice we also have a small inscription. Not all coins of Khusro have it, and it reads excellent, referring to the excellent metal quality of the coin, so showing it was pure silver. Heading to the reverse, we once more have the two attendants taking care of the fire altar. In this case, they have their hands resting over their swords and they're looking at us, the viewer, instead of looking at the fire. The Sassanids struck coins at a number of mints, dozens in fact. There are two small inscriptions at the right and the left of the attendants. These are the date and mint mark for this coin. I'll leave a link to a website in the video description, to a website that serves as a good reference for you to look and identify your own coin. You can do some pattern recognition between the letterings and the reference in this page, as I don't expect many of you to learn Middle Persian just to identify these coins. In the example of this particular piece, it is from the mint of Jai, close to what is now the city of Isfahan on modern-day Iran. The date part has the number 32 written on it, so that's the 32nd regnal year of Khusro, meaning this particular coin was struck in the year 622 AD. After Khusro, the Sasanian Empire would have the same fate as the Parthian Empire before it, a series of ineffective rulers that led to internal revolts, the destabilization of the political system, and the eventual fall of this once great state before the Rashidun Caliphate. The Islamic world would benefit enormously from the technological advancements and the prosperity of this newly captured land, and one could say that up to this day, in Islamic art and architecture, we can still find the echoes of the great Sasanians. Truly an incredible ancient empire we should pay more attention to, especially their coins. Have you got a Sasanian coin? Let us know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this little episode. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon.